Hi again then guys, and welcome to another look to the world of Forza Motorsport 3, once again to another one of the cars that kind of ended its run in this game. That's the whole point of these reviews, of course, and this is a car which actually cost me a little bit more effort than a video like this usually would. And what I mean by that is, I had actually prepared to review this car, and I'd even driven it and recorded the footage and everything on Forza 2. But I hadn't double-checked whether or not it was featured on a later game, and it is Forza 3. So unfortunately, I had to postpone the car and review something completely different, which was kind of annoying for a moment, but it's not too bad, of course. So I hopped on Forza 3, drove the car, and now we're doing it today instead. Now this is the interesting thing. Although this car, as with quite a few vehicles like it, is featured on older games, I believe it's also on Forza 1 as well, although that's the only Forza game that I still haven't played yet, although I do own it. The specs actually changed on this car. In the time it took from Forza 2 to Forza 3, it miraculously got more powerful, by quite a lot. It's like in the 400, something like 450 horsepower region on Forza 2, whereas now it's 550. That's a pretty big jump, so it does make me wonder which one's more accurate. I haven't looked into that, and I'm sure there are those of you guys who have or who know. To me, it's not the kind of car that I do a massive amount of background research on, and of course, that's not really the point of these reviews. For the most part, it's more so what the car's like. So, apart from the power, what else does it have on offer? Because a Mustang, to any Mustang fan, they'll know this, it gives you a lot to work with. It's a very responsive car to tuning in road form, it's great in a straight line, it's pretty good through corners actually, surprisingly good sometimes, and although it's typically thought of as just a pure muscle car regardless of its generation, it is more than that, for sure. It can go up against sports cars, in some cases even certain race cars if you tune it right, and of course with a Mustang like this one, which is already a race car, well, you've immediately got a leg up already. You've got better tyres, more downforce, it's more track focused by nature, and when, such as this one had, a power jump between games, well, that's never a bad thing either. Now the pricing is still very good, just like it was on Forza 2, it's a 150 grand car. And incidentally, although it's not a four-door vehicle, of course, I do believe strongly that this makes a great rival to stuff like the Cadillac CTS-V race car and both of the Champion Racing Audis, which we've also reviewed, the RS6 and the S4. It's got a very similar kind of body style, similar kind of spec. It's a little bit lighter, it's also of course rear-wheel drive, unlike the Audis, and it's just that similar kind of car. Now, a Mustang isn't many people's first choice of race car. Of course, to a Mustang fan it will be, but for the rest of us, probably not. So the real question is, should you use one? And if you do, is it going to be good? Well, I'm glad to say, yeah, it actually will, because on both Forza 2 and 3, and I have no doubt on the first game as well if it is on there, that this is a good choice to go for. It's not an obvious one, which I believe is probably one of the main reasons why it wasn't featured after this game, because it does seem like the kind of race car that would continue to pop up, even in say Forza 6 or 7, and yet, as far as I'm aware, it hasn't. And I also don't think it has much of a chance of coming back as DLC. Because as interesting as it is, and it is an interesting race car, and a pretty good one as well, it's not exactly a fan favourite. I never saw people using this online that I can recall on any of the Forza games that it's featured on, and that's kind of a shame, because those people were missing out. This is a good race car. It's not overly heavy at 1,315 kilos, the torque is also very good, which isn't too surprising, 450 pound-feet. The engine, not too surprisingly again, is a 4.6 litre, as pretty much all of the Mustangs of this generation were, and the class is very useful. R3, but it's very low, 704. So as far as tuning goes, I believe you could do a bit to it. I didn't fully tune the one in this video, I'm driving it stock, but if I recall, I think you can upgrade it a bit. Now, as far as how it actually performs, you've got a little bit of potential for sliding around, which it's not too surprising, you can certainly forgive it for that, but the increased downforce, the better tyres, plus of course whatever kind of tuning that you want to do to it can certainly make this into a weapon on the track. And as far as muscle cars go in the game, if you really think about it, there aren't that many racing muscle cars, or pony cars, whatever you want to refer to it as, but you know what I mean. In a general sense, in the muscle category, and everything that that entails, there aren't that many race cars. There are plenty of road cars, especially classics, but not many racing ones. So in a funny kind of way, if you are a muscle fan, not just a Mustang fan, this is kind of a good car to represent that love. And what I mean by that is, for instance, someone like me, when I enter a race on Forza or Gran Turismo, whatever the case may be, more often than not, I will be more concerned about representing a car or a brand that I love, rather than just choosing something that I think will win. Now, sometimes those two things can align. For instance, if you're going for a top-tier prototype racer, and I happen to love Panoz and Cadillac in that category, well, they're still pretty good choices to go for, because they're very competitive. Whereas in the GT3 class, you might go for something more on the level of something like a Panoz Abruzzi, or the Esperante GT2 car for GT2 racing. They're not necessarily the best option, but I'll still enjoy representing the brand. Now, not everyone thinks that way. Some people do just go for what's the fastest. And if you are looking to do that, well, then the Mustang probably isn't the choice for you. But if you are, of course, a Mustang fan, if you're in a broader sense a Ford fan, and in a very broad sense just a muscle fan, or that kind of category of vehicle fan, then this is certainly one to look out for. It's a good way to represent that love, but with a car that does have potential. It's got great raw power and torque, the weight is reasonable, the handling is fairly smooth. As I said, you can kick the tail out for sure, but it's nothing that you can't control. And again, for the price, 150 grand is good. It gives you a lot to work with, plus the fact that it's not as obvious a choice means that if you do choose to use it online, for instance, especially back in the day, there's a pretty high chance that nobody else in the race is going to be using it. With, of course, some exceptions. But overall, it's certainly a car that's worth checking out if you go back, and it's one which is kind of easy to overlook in the dealerships. There are certainly more exciting options out there, but in its own way, I'd say this is a good race car. But that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.